name is Jennifer Hiltwine, and I'm the Senior R&D Specialist here at CIT. I'm really pleased to have the opportunity today to talk with you about the CRCF FY17 application process. I'll go through the components of the online application, cover tips for preparing strong proposals, and highlight common pitfalls to avoid or to pay close attention to when completing your application. We'll wrap up the session with an opportunity for Q&A. Today's presentation does not cover CRCF project budgets and matching funds, but I do hope you'll consider joining me tomorrow at 2 p.m. for a session targeting those topics. Before we get started, if this is your first time participating in a CRCF webinar, all participants have been placed on mute to avoid any background noise or feedback. Questions may be submitted anytime during or following the presentation by expanding your webinar control panel and typing your questions into the questions feature. This session, as with all CRCF webinars, is being recorded. The slides will be available by close of business today, and the recording will be available by the end of the week. Once available, both can be accessed from the solicitation landing page on CIT's website. The goal of CRCF is to fund high-potential technologies from Commonwealth organizations to spur economic development across the states. We are currently in our 8th round and to date have announced 232 awards totaling almost $20 million. For FY17, $2.8 million is available to award to academic, the private sector, federal labs, and other research organizations. I won't spend time this morning discussing the 5 programs, but you are welcome to spend a few minutes checking out the solicitation overview or the LOI webinar slides or the recording that were conducted last month, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have during the Q&A portion of the presentation. Here's a quick snapshot of the key dates for FY17. By now, CIT has reviewed all LOIs received in mid-November. I expect that everyone participating today has been approved to submit an application. However, if you have not heard back about your submission, and especially if you haven't received instructions to access and complete your application, please email us right away at crcf@cit.org. Applications must be submitted by noon on Thursday, January the 19th, to be considered this round. Late submissions will not be accepted. Award announcements are planned for early June. Project work in FY17 must align with one of 7 primary industry sectors, which you selected in your LOI. This field will be non-modifiable in your application. However, you will also have the option to select a secondary industry sector from an expanded list of industry priorities. Including those on your screen, you can also identify alignment with aerospace, communications, nuclear physics, or transportation. We do ask that you do not select the same industry sector for both the primary and secondary selection. If your project aligns with only one tech sector, you may leave the field for secondary industry sector blank. All materials that you will need to submit an FY17 application can be found online. From the solicitation landing page, which is the URL on your screen, you'll find general resources to aid you in the process, such as FAQs and the webinars that I mentioned earlier. However, the majority of the materials that you will need can be accessed by clicking the hyperlink to the CRCF program your LOI was approved under. From these program pages, you'll find the guidelines, proposal and budget templates, and a sample application. As with the letter of intent, applications must be completed and submitted online. Hard copies or soft copies attached via email will not be accepted. So how do you access your application? First, although there is a lot of information on the CIT and CRCF web pages that we just discussed, a link to submit your application is not one of them. Because applicants must be invited to submit an application, the link to do so can only be found within your automatic acceptance email sent from crcf@cit.org. The subject line, Instructions for Submitting CRCF FY17 Applications. It's important that you keep this email handy until you've submitted your application. Again, if you did not receive this, please email my team. Applicants received one email for each project that was approved. This is particularly important if you may have projects under 2 different programs. So when you receive this email, save it in a safe place. When you're ready to begin working on your application, click on the unique link at the bottom. When you click on that hyperlink, you'll be brought to a login page. Please enter the username and password associated with your account and the LOI that you submitted. If you've forgotten your password, you may click on the Forgot Your Password link to retrieve your information. Many of our applicants are affiliated with multiple organizations, such as a university and a company. If this is you, you'll next see a screen asking you to select the organization connected to the application you are completing. If you are only affiliated with one organization that has sought CRCF funding, you will not see this screen at all. After logging in, you'll be brought to a welcome page. Scroll to the bottom under the Pending Applications section. You'll see a blue Revise hyperlink next to the project title you'll submit. Click that Revise link to access the online questionnaire. I'll take this opportunity while we have this screenshot up to note that you can start but not submit an application. For instance, in my first 2 text projects on this screen, you can see I entered a request amount. As long as you see a Revise link next to a project, you can work on and submit it until the deadline. Once you click Revise, you'll start the questionnaire, beginning with organization. This information should match what you submitted in your LOI, and if you had the option to select an organization after the login screen, the organization that you did select. Always click Save and Proceed to move to the next screen. You can go back or forwards to a section by clicking on the hyperlinked breadcrumbs. Enter information on the applicant organization's authorized representative next. Remember, this is an individual who is authorized to execute legal documents on behalf of the applicant organization. In the case of a college or university, the authorized representative is an individual from the Office of Research, Office of Sponsored Programs, or a similar office within your institution. The principal investigator or department chair would not be accepted as the authorized representative. I'd like to draw your attention to the principal investigator section. If the authorized representative and the principal investigator are the same individual, particularly for our small business applicants, you can indicate this by selecting Yes at this question and proceed to the next section. If the authorized representative and principal investigator are not the same person, select No for this question and complete the fields that appear on your screen before proceeding. The fields will mimic what you saw on the authorized representative page. The next section of the questionnaire pertains to project information. Here's where you'll indicate the amount of funds requested, the project match, period of performance, and upload your proposal, budget, and appendix documents. You'll notice certain fields are not modifiable, such as the CIT reference number, program type, project title, and primary industry sector. If there is something incorrect with any of this information, please let the CIT team know right away. The CIT reference number is a unique number assigned to your project at the time of your LOI conversion into a program application. It's a number that begins with the program type, CP, ER, MF, SBIR, or STTR, and followed by the number 17. The CIT reference number is different than the 8-digit request ID number used to identify your LOI. While that number is still connected to your submission in the online portal, it's the CIT reference number that we will use to identify and refer to your project moving forward. As you'll be instructed in the guidelines, this is also the number that should be used in the file name for all uploaded documents. To upload the documents, click on the Upload File button. A small pop-up window will appear that allows you to choose a file. Click on the button. Once you select the file, you'll see it appear in black text next to the Choose File button. Click again on Upload File. Give the system a second and you'll see your file become a blue hyperlink. You can now click Close Window. Back on the main screen, you'll see your document appear next to that field. The last screen you'll come to is the certification page. By proceeding and submitting your application, you are certifying compliance with eligibility and other criteria outlined in the program guidelines. Prior to submitting your application, you'll have the ability to save or move forward with submitting. Applications may be worked on and modified until they are submitted, but once submitted, modifications are no longer possible. Once you submit, a confirmation will appear on your screen and an automatically generated email will be sent to you confirming receipt by CIT. Don't panic if that email is not instantaneous, as this can often take up to an hour, especially during busy times. However, if you don't receive this notification, please contact the CRCF team. Remember, you must hit that submit button by noon on January the 19th. The system will close down at that time, so applications that are in progress but not submitted will not be accepted. All applications are similar, but there are some differences depending on program. The particular example we've just walked through was for the commercialization program. Sample program applications are available to download from CIT's website. These documents are in PDF format and are only meant to give example of the questions you'll find in the online form. Importantly, so I want to call this out first and foremost, each program has specific templates for the proposal and budget. To download, visit the program pages on CIT's website we've been talking about a couple of times now, and go to the Documents widget on the top right hand of your screen. Please use these current templates. If you're familiar with CRCF and have prepared an application during a prior round, please don't resubmit the materials as they were prepared before. Changes are made each year to the templates, and we expect submissions in FY17 to use the FY17 templates. Submissions that do not use the correct templates, program, or round may not be accepted. Each proposal template requires 2 to 3 sections, depending on the program. In the template, you'll find headings for the technical discussion and strategic plan, and for SBIR and STTR applicants, also a commercialization plan. The guidelines lay out the content that should be included in your application. We've laid out all this information in a format that, hopefully, you'll be able to use as an outline. We want to make this as easy and straightforward as possible. I'll walk you through the template itself in just a few minutes. Once you've completed the proposal, it should be uploaded as a PDF document. Please note that the system will not accept uploads bigger than 5 megabytes. The budget template has 2 tabs, and both tabs must be completed. Tomorrow's budget-specific webinar will walk you through that process and the information sought. If your project will run longer than a year, email my team for a multi-year template. The appendix is the last component required for all applicants. There is not a template for this section, but required content varies by program. Again, refer to the guidelines for what information should be included. Typical content includes the letter from the authorized representative, which is required for all, additional letters of support, which are optional, CVs, bibliographies or references, and other items. All appendices must be within the allowable page limits. Information that is included but falls outside of the page limit will not be reviewed. It is acceptable to combine information into a single page, such as multiple letters of support, if space is an issue, provided that all information is legible. Applicants under the SBIR or STTR matching funds programs must also provide their official notice of award for their Phase 1 or 2 project. If you're providing the contract, we only need the signed first page. In the case that you are applying to CRCF with a federal proposal submitted but pending an award decision, or for a deadline not later than January 31st, 2017, we request that you upload into this field a PDF document that includes the submission deadline, sponsoring agency, whether the proposal is a Phase 1 or Phase 2, the project title, and the estimated date of award. If you are providing a screenshot of the submission, ensure that the information is legible. Should a CRCF award be recommended for funding in June, funding would be contingent upon receipt of that federal award. If you learn about the status of your submission at any time during the application review process, CIT should be notified within 2 business days. Here is a screenshot of a commercialization program proposal template. As I've mentioned, templates do vary by program, so you'll need to download and use the one specific to the program you're applying under. On the template, you'll see prompts to enter text here. Click in that space and either type or paste content. The top section, which mimics information requested in the online questionnaire, is also required here. Please ensure information is the same in all places. Don't delete this section or leave it blank. Suggestions for page limits for each section of the proposal are found within the guidelines. While the proposal itself may not exceed a certain number of pages, how you allot space is up to you this year. Just make sure you include all of the required content. A note, the maximum allowed pages is exclusive of the top section information. So if you're looking at page numbers, information may extend to the top of a final page. Additionally, a page break has been included between the technical discussion and strategic plan, and for SBIR and STTR, also between the strategic plan and the commercialization plan. It's okay for these sections to start on a clean and separate page of the template without penalty. All uploaded materials should be in final form, without track changes or internal comments. Proposals should be uploaded into the online form in PDF format. All uploaded materials should be saved with the nomenclature described in the guidelines. CRCF seeks applicants with a clear idea of an unmet need or opportunity. Your technology should exhibit strong potential to benefit the Commonwealth economically. Applicants need to have thought through and have a realistic picture of the CRCF project and a commercialization strategy. When will commercialization take place, and what will it take to get it there? CRCF projects should be ones where the $50,000 or $100,000 in funding will be meaningful to advance the technology to a point where it will be attractive for larger scale public or private funding. As you are thinking through some of these pointers, I'll also provide some additional tips to consider as you're preparing your application and proposal. Above all, we understand the effort that goes into a submission and the potential value of receiving CRCF funding. Therefore, we want to provide you with as many resources and advice as possible to craft strong and impactful submissions. However, please note that these tips are not a guarantee for CRCF award, but are meant to aid you in preparing your most successful submission. Sample proposals or winning proposals are not made available. We've split this year's tips into a few categories, and I'll share essentially a laundry list of pointers under each. If additional clarification would be helpful, I'd be glad to address in greater detail during the Q&A. Approach. CRCF application should focus on CRCF work. You should demonstrate why CRCF funding is critical. Project economic benefits to Virginia. This could be at a high level, and demonstrate that you are thinking through to commercialization and beyond. Discuss your plans for commercialization. Remember that CRCF is not a major equipment acquisition program. Demonstrate the foundation for making a claim on market opportunity. Highlight your technology's competitive advantage of the proposed solution and market penetration strategies. Present a thought-through proposal with a logical, realistic work plan. You should include appropriate team and partners to accomplish these goals. Make sure to discuss your plans to secure and protect IP. I'll note that the strength of the team is evaluated and CVs are requested as part of your application. Additionally, executed IP agreements are required before awarded funds can be dispersed in cases with dual or multi-party projects. These IP agreements must be durable enough to satisfy commercialization. So your team should be thinking through and planning for the timing of this. Content and formatting. Refer to the program guidelines for content and formatting direction. Make sure to use program-specific templates from the current round. Write clearly. Use your space wisely. Consider the value of images, graphs, the size of text, and the amount of background information that's provided. Maximize the allowable page count. The proposed project ought to be realistic. That means the work plan, what you're able to accomplish, the timeline, how long it will take to accomplish the project and commercialize, and funding, what it will take to get it to market. A detailed work plan is a critical component of your proposal. Again, CRCF is seeking a thought-out approach to how the project will be completed and how funds will be used. This includes tasks and activities, subtasks, and measurable milestones that demonstrate that the project is on task. A graphic timeline is a required element for all applications and should align with the work plan. That is, it should depict the tasks, subtasks, and milestones, when they occur, and when they will be completed against the project's period of performance. A quick Google search will give examples of different types of Gantt charts. A sound evaluation plan is also required. This should be an overview of the criteria that describes performance measures for determining whether project objectives and milestones have been met, criteria that defines long-term project success, and how project execution will be managed. Your evaluation plan discussion should go beyond identifying the frequency of meetings and the software that may be used for this process. Consistency and accuracy. Make sure that the budget correlates to the application materials. Make sure that the information keyed into the online questionnaire is also consistent with the information entered into the top of your proposal document and in your budget. CIT runs reports from the data that's entered into the online questionnaire. It's important and appreciated that this information is as correct as possible, so we ask that you pay close attention before submitting. For resubmissions, follow-on, and complementary submissions. For resubmissions, show the work that has been done in the interim since your previous submission, or award in the case that you needed to decline funding, to advance the technology. Address any concerns raised by the reviewers of non-funded CRCF applications. For follow-on submissions, briefly highlight how CRCF funds help to achieve particular outcomes in your prior project, and then how new funding will continue to advance the technology toward commercialization. For complementary submissions, reference your other application and include how they may complement each other toward fulfilling the overall goal. Don't submit each in a silo unless they are totally different projects. If overlap does exist between requested funds or efforts, briefly address this in case both are funded or if only one is funded, what need to be adjusted in the work plan or in the budget. This year, we thought it may also be helpful to call out some common pitfalls or things to avoid in your applications. As you'll see at the top of the slide, in program guidelines and FAQs, and even in your instruction email, applications that do not comply with the guidelines will not proceed past initial review. CIT will not reach out to applicants for clarification or to request additional information. So, what should you not do? Make sure that you provide the appropriate amount of detail for an understanding of the work. Pay attention to required elements. Omitting these can result in your application not moving forward, such as the work plan or graphic timeline or the appropriate number of CVs. Pay close attention to caps. These exist on some budget categories. You'll want to make sure that you note your direct costs versus indirect cost ratio and the work being conducted by your applicant organization versus subcontractors. Evaluate your evaluation plan content. As we just discussed, make sure to include a discussion of economic development potential for Virginia. And lastly, sloppy submissions are noted by the reviewers. Do a thorough review of your submission in the proposal and budget documents before hitting submit. Now that you've submitted your application on January the 19th, what happens during the 5.5 months before awards are announced? Well, once submitted, all applications go through an administrative compliance review conducted by CIT. Applications that are eligible will advance to subject matter experts, or SMEs, who review projects for their technical merit and commercialization potential and rank these submissions. Those projects recommended to advance will go on to the legislatively appointed Research and Technology Investment Advisory Committee, or the RTAC. This 10-member RTAC body reviews applications and makes award recommendations to the CIT Board of Directors, who in turn makes the final award decisions. For this solicitation, award announcements are planned for early June 2017. As I've mentioned, CIT provides many resources to aid you in the application process. Complete information on the FY17 solicitation is available via the URL on your screen. This should look familiar by now. From here, you'll find the webinars, registration links or the slides and recordings from sessions already hosted, FAQs, and sample materials. You'll also find links to the program pages where you can access those critical guidelines and templates. If you have any questions throughout the solicitation not addressed by the available materials, please reach out to my team at crcf@cit.org. We are available during business hours Monday through Friday and look forward to working with you. This concludes the prepared portion of the webinar. I'd now like to invite any questions you may have at this time. Again, questions can be submitted by expanding your webinar control panel and using the questions feature. I'll address all questions in the order they come in as best as possible for the benefit of all participants. If a question requires more information, I'll follow up with that individual separately at the conclusion of the session. So our first question today, can you say more about the economic development potential for a scientific or technical project? Yes, so all of the applications that we receive, the proposals for different technology development projects, we expect that there is a certain level of economic development benefit that will happen here in the Commonwealth. We are a state-funded grant program, so the Commonwealth is in fact giving CIT money to administer this program, and we're putting that back into our state and wanting to see the return on investment here in the Commonwealth. So while your project may be earlier stage or you're just starting out and trying to develop the technology, we're asking you to start thinking through how that might benefit the Commonwealth economically. For example, would there be job creation potential from the technology once it reaches the commercialization stage? Would there be the opportunity to spin out the technology into a new company, developing that here in Virginia? If you're with a university, would the IP generate revenue? Would there be different opportunities in terms of working with a manufacturing plant here in the Commonwealth? So those types of things may be examples of the potential for your particular project. Again, this could be high level, your project could be earlier, but begin that conversation and talk to us about what that potential looks like. Is there any limit to the number of funding awards made from the $2.8 million fund? There is not. So in total, we have $2.8 million available to award across all of the 5 programs. There is not a predetermined number per program, nor is there a predetermined number for the public versus the private sector. We are looking to fund the best possible submissions that are going to lead to those economic benefits here in the Commonwealth, and it just depends this particular round how that shakes out. If an organization has consistent government rates used for all programs, but that have overhead rates that are higher than the cap, how should those be handled in the cost volume? I think the answer to your question may be a simple one, but please let me know if this doesn't address it. We understand that all of our organizations may have different approved rates for their company for overhead and G&A. If that's the case, we are not actually asking for any of that information this year. We have in the past, but have removed that from part of our the information requested, because all we are looking for is that you are able to request indirect costs up to that cap. So for example, if you are a small business under the commercialization program, you can request up to $50,000 from CIT, from CRCF, and 10% of that can go to indirect cost. So if you were going to request the full $50,000, then up to $5,000 could be used in indirect cost support. You would just tell us what those indirect costs are. For CRCF Matching Funds Program, the application asks for both the amount of CRCF funds requested and matching funds. Can you explain the matching funds amount? I can, and I definitely encourage anyone who has questions about matching funds or completing the budget to participate in tomorrow's budget webinar. I'll go through a lot of the information in terms of completing those documents, what matching funds are, and it may be a good and helpful reminder for participants. In terms of the match, all of the CRCF programs have a matching requirement, and that's a one-to-one match. Now, I say that with a caveat. For our commercialization, matching funds, and eminent researcher recruitment programs, that match must be one-to-one and provided by the applicant. If someone is applying under the SBIR or STTR matching funds program, the match requirement is fulfilled by that federal award, so additional match is not required. So for the matching funds program, that match can come from a variety of sources. If you're working with the university, all of the university staff are quite familiar with the CRCF program and would be able to work with you to identify those costs. Essentially, they can come from either cash money or in-kind support. It might be waived labor costs, fringe benefits. It could be travel associated with the project, costs associated with purchasing materials and supplies or equipment. So those monies can come from a variety of different places, but they must be active and available during your proposed period of performance. And I'd be glad to talk with you more about the match, or again, I definitely encourage participation in tomorrow's session. Can you explain a little more about the ideal stage of the technology development for this program, before proof of concept or initial testing? So it depends on what program you are applying under. So for our university applicants, this could be earlier in the process. It may be more of the basic research, trying to determine whether the technology is viable, whether there's going to be a market for that. So CRCF can come in and help to prove whether in fact this technology is something that may work. For our private sector, in particular under the commercialization program, we are looking for technologies that are at that proof of concept stage. So being able to validate that, yes, I have a prototype and this is what needs to be done to test it, to update it, and to make sure that it's in a position to enter the market. Within everything, there's certainly a little bit of leverage. So if you submitted an LOI and it was approved for application submission, we took the project information that you talked about in that project description, did an initial assessment about whether or not it fit those guidelines. And so everyone who was approved there, we felt that there was potential and a good fit for your particular program. I'll also say here that we also understand that there may be more, and in fact there is more than CRCF could cover. So you're a small business and you're requesting $50,000 from CRCF. That $50,000 probably is not going to be enough to actually land that technology in the market. But our goal is to make that technology to a point where you could attract additional investment, or you apply again next year and are continuing to work towards that commercialization process and that end goal. So we come in and support a part of it, but it may not be everything. So CRCF really does support through all stages of that technology development process. Can you describe the level of detail desired for measurable milestones? Would you want experimental results, for example? For the work plan and those measurable milestones, and even for that evaluation plan, because all of them work together, we are looking for you to describe the project that you are intending to undertake. It may be that your milestone, you're able to say, I am looking for a result of X, and that will allow me to be able to move on to the next step, or to say that I've reached my goal. If you have a project that allows you to go into that level of detail, then please absolutely provide it. Other measurable milestones may be things like achieving up to a certain rate or between a range. It may be that you're getting the approval of a test group that things are going in the right direction. So it really would just depend on your particular project and also the particular task or subtask that you're working on. For those milestones, you should be able to, in that evaluation plan, say at the end of the day, was it met or not met? And so we are looking for you to be able to think through that. In the case that a CRCF award is made, we would also ask for that level of detail in future reports. So that would allow us to see whether your project is on track, whether additional funds or the second half of your funds would be ready for disbursement, some of those types of things. We want to make sure that you are presenting that thought out proposal and that thought out work plan. For the commercialization match, you said that the match must come from the applicant. Does that mean that the applicant cannot have a third party provide the match? No. So in fact, a third party could provide the match. If you are working, for example, with a partner organization on the project, that match could come from the partner organization. It could be that you are working with a lawyer to protect IP and he is willing to waive those fees or sort of contribute that as part of the match. That would certainly be acceptable. The key part there is that the applicant or its affiliated organizations would be providing that. An additional source may be a grant or federal grant, perhaps it's an SBIR or it's a different piece there. You would be able to provide those monies towards the match, again, provided that they are available and unspent during the CRCF period of performance. I'll take a quick moment here while additional questions may be coming through to talk to any university researchers who are on today's presentation. For our matching funds program, there is a letter from the tech transfer as a required element. This is something that we envision as presenting the applicants and the university's vision for commercialization for the technology, its competitive advantage, the market opportunity, what's the potential contribution to Virginia. We are looking for you to work closely with that tech transfer office, and much like your offices of sponsored programs are aware of CRCF and what the requirements are, so too is the tech transfer office, and they'll be expecting to work with you throughout this process. If you haven't already made contact with them to talk about this requirement and your technology in particular, please start that conversation. You'll be working closely with them, and we see this as an endorsement of the technology and its potential coming from your institution. All of these letters should be different. It's not a cookie cutter letter like the organizational support, like that letter from the authorized representative. So definitely start those conversations for that component of your application. Are there certain types of letters of support more or less helpful for small business commercialization funding? So regarding letters of support, I always say that they can't hurt. They are not a required element, but in any way that you can show validation or endorsement of your technology, it's a great step forward because it shows our reviewers that other people are interested in that technology. Maybe you're working with them as a project partner. Maybe they're potential customers or clients. So anything that you can do, whether it's through a letter of support or even just through a discussion in your proposal to show that endorsement and that validation, it does go a long way. So how is a co-principal investigator reflected on the proposal, the budget, or the letter of collaboration? Co-principal investigators are not a required field, so we do ask for that lead principal investigator on your application. But in your proposal, and you'll see this in the guidelines, that we ask for a discussion of the team members, who is involved in the CRCF project, and that would be an appropriate place to call that individual out as a co-PI, discussing his or her role in the CRCF work. And then where I talked about sort of the correlation between your different materials as part of the tips, if they are receiving CRCF funding or if their time is being supplied as the project match, we would look for your budget narrative to also reflect that particular individual, showing their rate of pay, the amount of time and effort that will be spent on CRCF. So we would look for that correlation between the documents, and that's where you would be able to include that information. I would say if you have a co-PI providing that information as a letter of support probably wouldn't be necessary, although you're more than welcome to include that information if you'd like. Definitely in the proposal and the budget would be two places where you would want to include that, that data. So how long can CVs be? In the guidelines, we indicate that CVs should be a 2-page maximum. With that said, the use of space in your appendix is up to you for the additional page count. So we do have some required elements that need to be included, but if you have additional pages and aren't providing letters of support, or if you've combined letters of support into one page to make room, and you have a longer CV, then that would be appropriate. But you'll see in the guidelines that it would be a 2-page CV. So if you have other questions that come to mind after we end today's session, I encourage you to take a look at the different resources available. Those FAQs and those guidelines are going to provide a lot of information, as are the additional webinars that are offered throughout the solicitation. Tomorrow's webinar focuses on the budget, and then we'll have another 2 sessions in January on the same topics. So a presentation very similar to what you've experienced today, and one very similar to tomorrow's will be held January the 9th and the 10th. So there are a lot of resources out there, again, to aid you in this process. But if you have questions after this wraps up, please don't hesitate to let my team know. CRCF@CIT.org is the go-to email address that's monitored by multiple team members, and we would be glad to address any questions you have. So with that, I will wrap up today's session and really appreciate your participation and your interest in CRCF, and hope that everybody has a terrific afternoon. So thanks again for participating. Bye-bye.